nonprofit local trade association of businesses in town. And I'd like to thank again Connie and Red River for allowing the Green Living Series to take part. Without the Red River, we wouldn't be here tonight, for instance. So thank you, Connie. And Red River is also a nonprofit organization, and you can get membership information out in the lobby. And I think if you join up with membership, you get free wine when you come or something. Is that right? Good idea, though. Okay. Anyway, we'll get started with the panelists, and Marilyn Wyzga, is that right? How's cool name? Is going to be the facilitator tonight, and so you're off the hook with me, as I usually facilitate. And we had a great day today. I hope everybody got to go outside today. It was the perfect New Hampshire day. So without any more chit-chatting here, Marilyn, thank you very much.
Thank you, Debbie. For people I don't know, I'm the coordinator of the New Hampshire Children in Nature Coalition, and you would have seen our table when you came in this evening. This is a group of organizations, businesses, individuals, state agencies, all kinds of folks around New Hampshire who are working for the same thing, and that's to reconnect children, youth, and families with the outdoors. So there's a great opportunity for you to get involved in lots of different ways, and I hope you'll check back at the table on your way out. Before we're done tonight, I'll be sure to draw the winner for the Nature Principle. You saw Rich Louv as one of the speakers in the movie tonight. He'll be back on Monday, Skyping in a live conversation with the audience. But for those of you who played the Story Sharing Bingo, we have a copy of Rich Louv's brand new, released 3 days ago, The Nature Principle. And Rich was the person who catalyzed this nationwide movement to reconnect children, youth, and families with nature with his first book, Last Child in the Woods. Okay, so I'm going to introduce each one of these panelists in turn and ask them to give you their thoughts about the film, and then I'm going to ask for questions from all of you. First in line we have Terry Johnson, who is the Director of Healthy Eating, Active Living New Hampshire, and one of the members of the collaborative leadership team for the New Hampshire Children in Nature Coalition. He's also an avid outdoorsman in biking and in running.
I'm going to go first? Yeah. Good evening, everybody. It's good to see so many people here tonight. So Marilyn asked us to watch the film tonight and then to talk just briefly about what resonated most for us. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Yeah. So how many of you, based on seeing those nature scenes tonight, would like to be out there right now or playing out tomorrow? I know I am too. And I might actually be in Rock Creek Park, because that's where I'm going to be this weekend. I'm heading down to Washington, D.C., and I used to live in that area. I'm really fond of that area. But I think one of the things that resonated with me most throughout this is that we've really done a great job throughout the last, 30, 40, 50 years or so, designing nature, physical activity, health, well-being right out of our lives. And you can see it, you can see it in how the opportunities that our children have these days, how our children are so weaned and so committed, so dedicated to technology. But I think about those scenes out there. I think about that one comment that one of the speakers talked about, where he said his children are happy being outside, and so he pushes them out that door. And I think about my childhood, and I think about growing up in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, which was an urban area, but it was very, very much filled with parks and opportunities to go outside. And growing up in the 60s and 70s, our parents would rather have had us outside than inside. And the worst punishment my parents could possibly give me was to ground me inside. And the worst occasion would be to put me in front of that little picture window, on a nice summer evening, so I could look outside and see all my friends out there playing around in the neighborhood. But we did that. We didn't even think about it. We didn't even think about going out. And in so many respects, both physically, emotionally, and otherwise, I think we've designed these opportunities right out of our lives. And so the other comment in that movie that I want to draw everybody's attention to, coming at this from a health perspective, the impact on this, of not being connected to nature, of not getting outside and being active, and the impact on the health of our children and our population. Truly, as the New England Journal of Medicine said, I think the comment there was that we're raising the first generation of kids that will, in a long time, that won't outlive its parents. And the New England Journal of Medicine puts it this way. They say that for the steady increases in life expectancy that we've experienced over the last 200 years is about to come to an end. And that's sad. You know, that's very sad to me. Why is that occurring? Because we've designed so much out of this out of our lives. And so from a heal perspective, healthy eating, active living, we're focused not as much on pointing the fingers at individual children or adults or anybody and saying it's your fault that you're not as healthy as you could be. It's your fault that you're not overweight. It's your responsibility to take control of your life and to live a healthier lifestyle. No, it's really about the environments that we design. It's about designing our communities so that we can make the healthy choice the easy choice. So that, I mean, you'll notice that a lot of the footage in the film was shot in the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area, two of the most highly populated areas of the country. You know, one big urban area down there. And the way that those cities are designed is that even in the most urban settings, nature is right outside your door. And we can do that, and we can do that in all of our communities. We just need to make sure that we're designing our communities to accommodate that. And we haven't done such a good job of that over the years, and our communities are sprawling and filled with concrete, and it doesn't make it very easy to access nature and opportunities for physical activity. So, so my perspective on this is that we all have a responsibility to really reach out to our community planners and our key decision makers in the state and encourage them to design our communities in a healthier way.
Thank you, Terry. And a good point, because the benefits of the reconnecting children, youth, and families with nature touch on all these different areas of child development, and so that's part of what motivated bringing this particular panel together. The next person is Mindy Beltramo. Her job is as librarian for the Peter Woodbury School in Bedford. She's also a farmer, raises llamas, and she's a mom from Canterbury. In particular, the Peter Woodbury School created this whole renovation of their school grounds called Growing Inside Out, and the driver, the motivator behind it, well, one of the four drivers behind it was Mindy. So I'll have you briefly comment on the movie.
Well, I do children, I don't do adults, so this is really scary. So, you can stick me in front of 700 kids and I'm fine. So, the movie, thank God for Richard Louv, I guess, to start out with. He has said so eloquently, so many times over and over, in such a unintimidating way, what I think all of us here know deep in our hearts. And I think the best part about him is that he's reaching other people, and we as a school, as a professional, read The Last Child in the Woods. And so the 20 of us or so that read the book, we kind of said, well, this is pretty profound. What can we do about this? And how can we alter the way we're teaching? And so we started interviewing the kids. We started working with Marilyn and her Project Home program that she has to offer, and we started going to conferences, and we ended up hooking up with NHTI and their landscape design program, and they took a chance on us as children and as educators, and treated us with respect and clients, and put together this beautiful plan for our schoolyard, which was really this desert oasis of barch milk. And barch milk. No. You know what I mean. Thank you. There you go. And you got it. And so we now have all these little microclimates, and we have fairy gardens, and we have a garden bed with 28 beds with one for each classroom, and we have a grass area, and we have, I don't know, it's just, I was out there this morning and the sun was coming through the trees, and 535 kids were getting off the buses and scattering all these different ways, and the tulips were blooming, and it was enchanting, and the kids were out there in the fairy garden and in the teepee structures and the longhouses, and we had just done this really cool lesson on ladybugs. And so the first graders just had released this week ladybugs into the plants that are growing. And so it didn't click at first. All these little first graders are out there looking in the heads of the tulips. And I'm like, what are they doing? Well, they're looking for the ladybugs that they had released, and that and Thumbelina. And so they're making those connections, and the imaginative play has come back. And our assistant principal would tell you that the amount of incidents out on the playground, with the aggressive incidences or just, general play issues have diminished because there's so many things for the kids to do, and they're making these revelations. And we started a garden club this year, and we had 45 kids in our garden club. And honestly, for the 3 of us that volunteered to do garden club, we were kind of hoping for the 12 weeks that number would diminish, and it hasn't. We have 43 of the 45 still with us, and they're so excited because we're planting and we're giving it away to Caregivers Incorporated in Manchester, and just it's a beautiful thing. And as I was watching this and thinking about my own children and going, well, I have a son who's just come home from college for the weekend, and what did he choose to do but to have a bonfire outside tonight because he doesn't want to go in? And I was like, oh, that's a pretty cool thing. So, and I grew up in Detroit, and we didn't have these times, I guess, this outdoor stuff. So my outdoorishness, I guess, came from moving to New Hampshire and Lenny Lample at Massapequa Fun Center. So he's my hero. So he taught me to turn over the logs.
Okay. Thank you, Mindy. Our next panelist is Amy Yackel. Amy's job is as the education director for the Squam Lakes Natural Science Center. Some of you may know her from there. One of the things that she's done recently is to create a nature-based preschool called the Blue Heron Preschool at the Squam Lakes Natural Science Center. And she has also recently become a mom. So, Amy.
Well, hello everyone, and thanks for being here tonight. Marilyn asked us, as she said, to think about something that resonated from the film as we watched it. And certainly for me, it took me back to my own childhood. And the reference in the film, particularly to the greater tendency and frequency of imaginative free play happening when children are in natural spaces compared to structured and thought out playgrounds, that happens so much more frequently in natural places. And I said, what did I do? And I have these great memories of summer. And of course it's summer because I was out of school, so it's this summer picture that I have of this amazing hemlock tree in my front yard of my home where I grew up. And it was over 70 feet tall, and it was a quite mature tree where the lower branches had fallen off and broken off. And so there were these great swooping branches that came from above and created that very special place to push back the lower branches and go into. And hours upon hours and days upon days were spent under this hemlock tree. And sometimes you'd bring out dolls, or sometimes you'd bring out some trucks and play under there with those things. But mostly we didn't have outdoor toys. We had what was around us in nature, and that's what I was doing all summer long. And so that's one piece from the film that certainly connected with me. Whenever you have a book like Last Child in the Woods or a film like the one we saw tonight, there are so many thoughts that come to mind, but that imaginative, unstructured, free play, and how important it is for that experience and that development to just happen as an individual, each child, each person in their own space at their own time. And so that, of course, makes me think about my son, and it makes me think about our programs at the Squam Lakes Natural Science Center, and how can we, in the face of frameworks and guidelines and time restrictions and budgets, make sure that even in the programs we offer, somehow we're incorporating this time for exploration and for growth, and to come to it in their own way, to poke around and to turn over the logs and to catch newts or whatever that might be. So it really took me back to a lot of the ways that I was spending my own time and wanting, as a child, and wanting to make sure that, to really work hard to create opportunities for those experiences to still continue for children when it seems like it's so often not a part of their lives. And that statistic of 44 hours per week versus 40 minutes outdoors is just that really speaks to me, and to work towards having the opportunities for children to spend that imaginative free play, unstructured time outdoors.
Great, excellent points. Thank you, Amy. And last but not least, we've got two people from the same family. John Cantor is the director of the Non-Game and Endangered Species Program at the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department. He's a wildlife biologist, a naturalist, and also a hunter, and he's here today with his son, Owen. So I'm going to introduce both of them together and ask for you both to comment on the film.
Well, one thing that I thought I could connect to most being a kid here, the only one, was that it wasn't mentioned too much, but that thought of there being kind of a risk as you jump from rock to rock or climb a little farther on that slippery log, and that just being out there and exploring new things and not having that equal space from step to step, and really just creating challenges for yourself and not just having it easy or having a challenging environment and learning new things and experiencing new things and just challenging your brain. And that's what I thought I could connect to most.
And as a parent, I said, "Oh my God, that kid's going to fall off the rock." One thing that I was thinking about as some of this came from the conversation prior to the movie starting, relative to technology and screen time. As a wildlife biologist by profession, I think that I feel like even in a profession like that, that I have my time and connection with nature really has diminished relative to the computer, email, and the internet. And again, as it was pointed out in the film, that's, they're powerful benefits and they're powerful tools for society to use. They're powerful tools for a wildlife biologist to use in doing their job. But that sense of it really kind of lost freedom. I don't know, what the solution is for getting away from having to interact through the screen so much. Who knows? Maybe smartphones or iPads or something, because we'll be more mobile with them. It's something simple or fundamental like that. I think that has to change about the way we use technology and the internet for communication. So, that's why I just had that sense that I'm kind of being robbed somewhat of the experiences that I cherish, even though relative to somebody in another profession, I guess I'm supposed to really be connected to nature. As a parent, I think that for us, and I think there are probably other parents in this room, perhaps we're really the exceptions. We're kind of counter to what this film shows, that many of our children are growing up with lots of outdoor experiences, and are being taught things perhaps that we weren't even taught as kids. I didn't have that kind of structured instruction on what habitat is and ecology and all that from the time I was in elementary school through high school, like I see my kids getting in school these days. So, I wasn't being told what I was looking at. I was just looking at it and experiencing. I was just grabbing the salamander from under the rock. I wasn't necessarily interested in identifying it right away. So I think from the experience of being a parent, watching my children, who obviously have a lot of access, living in a relatively small town of Hopkinton, and spending a lot of time in the outdoors, can't identify with that concept of children not having access. That said, I think access is really key. Access, I think about the most fundamental definition of access through like Fish and Game. It's our boat launches, public access. But access is so many other things. Access is teaching kids, how to open up a field guide and look up a bird. Or access is teaching kids how to cast a fishing rod or something. And I think we really need to be really broad about our definition of access, and that one of the things that our agency, a role that we can play, is broaden that definition of access to nature wide open. And I think if we present the opportunities, that allows children to connect back to nature. The last thing we want it to be is something that adults want kids to do, because then we know it won't get done. It can't be an adult movement. It has to be a youth movement.
Exactly. Thank you, John. So let's use that as a jumping off point to give this audience some access to the conversation. You just heard for an hour lots of different perspectives from people through the film, within the film, and also 5 different perspectives here. So what I would love to hear from you is questions that you have, comments that you want to direct back to this group, and so we can get sort of a dynamic exchange going. So anybody with questions from the audience? Yes. Ruth.
For people who aren't familiar with the Children in Nature Coalition, maybe you could tell folks how they could get involved.
I would be happy to do that. So Ruth is asking me to share with you how people could get involved with the New Hampshire Children in Nature Coalition. You'll find lots of information at the table. On the really basic, rudimentary level would be just getting outside into nature and taking your kids with you. There are other opportunities for you to be part of the collaborative leadership team, as Terry and I are, to be part of different committees. There are lots of folks involved in organizing tonight's events. So we've got a website, nhchildreninnature.org, and magnets out there and decals and other things. And I will be around afterwards, so would be happy to talk with you more about that. Other questions? I saw, yes, up there.
I guess in terms of access, I'm wondering if are any of your groups working with state and the regulations? My kids attended a few years ago a wonderful preschool that had a wooded play area, and it had a seasonal stream. And just recently, they've been told that they have to fence in the stream. They've got to block it. They have to somehow keep the children away from it. And it's so frustrating because it was just a wonderful piece of that really kind of open playground. And I just don't know if that's come up and if anyone's kind of working on that.
Okay, so I would imagine everybody could hear that, but the question was asking about regulations that have to do with allowing access, or maybe not limiting access to places in nature. Terry, do you want to respond to that? Or Amy, was there anything you were dealing with a preschool?
Sure. Yeah.
Great.
Thanks. Well, yeah, the regulations are certainly out there, and to be a licensed school and to meet those basic guidelines are incredibly important in terms of being respected, that you've kind of jumped through the hoops of the Good Housekeeping Seal of Approval, you have a safe area, and so on. They are sometimes daunting. There's of course thick books that you have to read through. Squam Lakes Natural Science Center definitely working with the state to make changes in the regulations. That's not something that we're actively pursuing, but I'd like to think that going through the process to become a licensed school had its impact, little places here and there. For example, there is a nature-based preschool at the South Shore Natural Science Center outside of Boston. And so before we opened our school, I visited places all over looking at sample schools. And my most wonderful moment there was she showed me their lack of fences in every direction. And she said that they had really worked with their regulators to explain how critically important it was to not fence the play spaces in and to have the children just simply learn where they could go and where they shouldn't be going. And they don't have fences. And that was an inspiration to me as we came to plan our school. I said, I don't want to have fences. And in working with our inspectors, they actually were wonderful to work with. And she completely understood when we said that we wanted to have a nature-based program that was partnered with a Montessori philosophy. And she said, okay, well, show me the places where you do want to have them be without a fence. Is there water nearby? Are there some other things we have to be concerned about? So although we're not pursuing the specific, trying to change the regulations, hopefully through our process, we got some people thinking in some different kinds of ways. And again, they were actually really wonderful to work with on it. There's also a listserv to become involved in called Earth Play, And there's a great recent story on there about a woman in New Jersey who's running a school where she had her inspectors come, and they now have told her that every tree branch under 7 feet of height has to be cut off because it is a dangerous hanging obstacle. And she's working against that, and she hasn't been relicensed as last I heard, but she had not yet had her license taken away either, and they were taking it under advisement. And but the power came from Earthplay, because there were all these people then that were able to back her up and give her information and give her testimonials and give her. So I think that power of the people and working together can be a pretty good way to go.
Yeah, I would just jump in there and say that the coalition certainly has room for people whose interests are in changing policy and changing regulations and maybe creating new appropriate regulations. For instance, making sure that every school offers recess and that is of a certain length of time, something very basic that's gradually being taken away from a lot of schools. So there's an opportunity for those of you in the audience who are interested in that sort of thing to take part in that way. Yeah, it's right up there.
I'd just like to make a comment about how we need to really focus on increasing access in urban areas. That was certainly a theme in this movie. But there are cities throughout the U.S., like in Portland, Oregon, where there are actually trails in the city where you can go from place to place by foot or by bicycle instead of walking on the sidewalks. There's a multi-use path in Concord, but there's not a lot of that sort of thing in downtown Concord, for example. And my friend Rachel is finishing up her undergraduate work in early childhood education, and instead of these concrete and steel playscapes, they have these wonderful natural playscapes that are really a refuge for these children amongst all of the concrete and steel of the city as well. And we could really use more of that in all of the cities throughout the United States. A little bit more nature.
Okay, so the comment was about urban access in particular and natural playscapes for people within urban areas. So it looks like Terry wants to respond to this. I think, Mindy, if you would also add in some comments about the playscapes that you created at Peter Woodbury.
Yeah, I just want to say too, one of the things that Healthy Eating Active Living New Hampshire does is support community coalitions that are working to revitalize and improve their communities, to improve access to physical activity and healthy foods throughout New Hampshire. Are you familiar with the Upper Valley Heal Partnership at all? Have you heard of them?
Just what you've mentioned.
Yeah, okay. So they are a partnership that's really, I think, a good example in New Hampshire of doing what you're talking about what's happened in Portland and other cities around the country. They are working with a multi-sector partnership, Upper Valley Trails Alliance. They're working with the Lebanon School District. They're working with partners who are Safe Routes to School program, the Department of Transportation, for example, who oversees that program. And what they're doing is they're working to, and with the planning commissions, they're working to change land use and planning codes within their master plan, within their community, to not only have more sidewalks and bikeways and that sort of thing in town, but to take advantage of the natural trail systems that they have that weaves through the community as well. So for example, they're working to get easements from, working to get rights away from private landowners, so that they can have trailways that connect, for example, from downtown Lebanon and urban areas, et cetera, to school. So you don't have to just go by sidewalk or by road, but you can actually, the kids can actually get to school, for example, on natural trails and that sort of thing. So there are initiatives like that. There's certainly the Rails to Trails projects that are occurring in New Hampshire as well. The Bike Walk Alliance for New Hampshire is working to create connectivity throughout the state. And there's some great work that's happening in one of our most urban environments through HEAL Innovation Fund project in the downtown area of Manchester as well, where they did a great job of getting the residents involved in really identifying where the barriers were to getting around on foot and bike in Manchester as well, improving safety, et cetera. So there's some great local coalitions that are focused on that.
Thanks, Terry. Mindy, you want to add in some thoughts about the features of the school ground that you all recreated, sort of creating a different kind of play area? I'm thinking of maybe the boulder area, the meadow, those sorts of things.
We started out as two very separate committees. We had the traditional Big Toy Committee, and we had what was dubbed the Tree Hugger Committee. And so I was part of the tree hugger committee, and so the traditional big toy committee, they spent a couple hours deciding what the color scheme was going to be for the big toy, and how many slides there was going to be on the big toy, and how many sets of swings, or do we need sets of swings, and what about a teeter-totter? That was a really big tipping point for the big no. And so then the rest of us tree hugger people, we were faced with all of the needs, because the kids, when we put their list together, they didn't ask for a big toy on their list of wants. They asked for running water, and they asked for a sand pit, and they asked for boulders, and they asked for gardens, and they asked for trees to shade them on those hot summer days, and they asked for slopes to run down, and so we were taking this ginormous list of natural things and trying to put them together, and so we have a huge sand pit that is lined by these very large boulders, and we actually had a community member that had sent a letter to our school, said, how could you possibly do this? This is such a horrible danger, and you're really setting yourselves up for disaster. And knock on wood, we've been so fortunate. The kids love the boulders, and every morning they make a beeline from the bus, they traipse across, and there are these little ant lines that kind of go back and forth and all around on the boulders, and they like them because they teeter and they totter, and that was a really big concern for all of us at first, because we live in fear of someone getting hurt and what will happen and so forth. So the rocks, they kind of wiggle around, and they hop from one to one, and so we have that. And the trees, we have just planted this huge cathedral of trees that will grow into this nice shaded structure, and we have a monarch meadow that we've created, and the kids, they like that. I really think the best thing out there, we had an artisan, Mark Ranganese, come over from Bellows Falls, Vermont, and so when we do our Native American unit, he comes and he brings these wonderful staves, these 18, 25-foot staves, and he helps the kids, facilitates the kids to build longhouses and teepees and whatnot. And these kids who have never held a tree in their hands before, it's like the biggest thing they've ever held. It could be a space shuttle for all they know. It's so, they just walk around with it. And I think that and the element of cooperation, and then they lace them all together, and then before you know it, these little fire pits have been resurrected in the middle of these buildings, and the imaginative play that's going on out there, and it's just, nobody goes on the big toy. That was the most painful thing to build, because of course after the big toy people were done with their selections, there wasn't a lot of support in the building of the big toy. So it's really all about those natural pieces. So if you're building a schoolyard, forget the big toy. Just go for the nature.
So that'll give you some real examples of some sorts of things that are happening out there that could happen in other places as well. Other questions from the audience? Yes.
I have a question for Owen. Did I get your name right?
Yeah.
Appreciated what you said, and I'm guessing you enjoy being outdoors, even taking some risks. I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about your friends and classmates, if you find they tend to prefer being outdoors in nature, or maybe playing computer games or watching TV, and how you can get them more interested in the outdoors.
Okay, so Owen, before you answer that question, I was just going to repeat it for the rest of the audience in case you didn't hear it. The questioner is asking about Owen's friends and how they interact with nature, or if they're spending more time indoors.
Well, I think there's kind of a difference. Like, there's some people that I know in school, and they are a lot less involved with nature, and I know some of them do hunt with their dads and like that maybe, or fish, or some of those experiences. But other than that, really the one difference with my one friend, and another friend, I've been hunting with them, and we bike down to a pond down the road, and we go down there and we fish, and then we keep some of the fish, and then we bring them back and we cook them. So some of the friends who I'm not connected to as much, I haven't really seen any, like, they're just influenced by their parents, but some of the closer friends I have kind of influenced and have, they've really, I've seen them enjoy it and enjoy the experiences that I enjoyed that I would like to show them, and which has been pretty cool, because when you first meet them, you would think at first glance that they wouldn't enjoy that, but everybody does in their own ways.
Keep teaching them.
It's hard to follow up on that, but I just wanted to say, I was, very encouraged to see the piece in the film on hunting. I didn't grow up hunting, and but I do now, and have both been teaching Owen how to hunt and learning together. We took up turkey hunt together. Neither of us had any experience with that. And what I've been struck with that is that the time intensity, that is just, it's something I didn't experience with my parents growing up. My mom was the one who took us out fishing. My dad's idea of an outdoor experience was a Holiday Inn, and so I didn't have that, but now I get to experience that connection with Owen, and hopefully with Carly here coming up sometime, It is just, it allows us to spend so much time together. It's not just the maybe 10 days a year that we hunt together, 10 days that we fish together. It's the preparation for, whether it's the night before we're going out and that. I mean, it really kind of is a wonderful way to get to spend a lot of time, a lot of very close and intense time with children. In our town, we have a very loose group of folks called the Kentucky Hunting and Angling Society, and we try to provide that kind of mentoring, whether it's a kid who is interested or a parent who's interested. We try to connect each other to being able to experience that.
Great, thank you both for responding to that question. We have time for a couple more questions, or maybe reactions, comments from the audience. Right up there.
I'm interested if anyone in the audience or any of the speakers are familiar with programs for adolescents in New Hampshire. The school in Marlow looked wonderful. It looked like kids actually leave school for, it's almost like an alternative school for a semester.
Actually, if I may, I'll jump in and answer that briefly, and then pass it on to the group here. On the table with the Children in Nature Coalition, you'll find flyers for our Natural Leaders program, and this is the third year in a row it's going to be running. It's for a week in June, and it's specifically for 14 through 17-year-olds, and they will be based up in the North Country in the White Mountains. They'll be visiting lots of different natural resource projects throughout the course of the week. They'll spend a night in one of the AMC huts. So that information is up there. Please do take a look. Again, this is the third time we've run it, and it's partnership with the Department of Environmental Services as well as the Appalachian Mountain Club. Anybody here have any suggestions for adolescents? No? Go ahead, Amy's got it.
It's not like Croca expeditions or that sort of thing, but at the Science Center, we just started 3 years ago, actually, so it's the third year for this as well, a program for teens called First Guides. We had a pretty well-established docent program where those are trained volunteers that can be out on the trails and interacting with the public, and we have been blown away by the response from the teens, the stepping up to the level of responsibility. They interact with the public in amazing ways, better than some of the folks who maybe were retired school teachers or had all these other professional experiences in their lifetime. And we work them hard. They go through trainings and they have to do projects, and they use their art skills and they use their public speaking skills, and it's been a really successful program. So that's not sort of an immersion in the wilderness kind of program, but it certainly is a natural science connection for them.
And I will say that the Croak Expeditions doesn't just do that very intensive experience. They have shorter term opportunities for adolescents as well. Over in this direction, the orange.
There's a camp in Plymouth, Vermont called Farming Wilderness. It's a Quaker camp, and many of the Quaker camps are just wonderful. And so many parts of the movie I would have thought would have been filmed there. They have circles in the woods, and the kids sing and talk. No electricity, only self-produced music in the evenings, and all sorts of expeditions. And it's an organic farm. Yeah, they work in the morning and play in the afternoon, and it literally saved my daughter's life.
Excellent. Thank you for that reference to Farming Wilderness. So right here, I don't know, do you have the same question, or is it just one of you wants to ask?
Oh, I wanted to do a little self-promo because my friend at Two Mountain Farm and I are collaborating to start a farm and wilderness camp called Ag Venture, which has a similar concept. It's an organic farm in CSA that the students will, or kids will participate in from ages 10 to 17. And then we'll have a lot of outdoor adventure type activities as well as designated time and space for them to be in the woods in the Andover region. And there are flyers on the table as well for that.
I had a different
You
question.
do have a question. Okay, great. So there was one reference to another program, but there's flyers again on our table for a new farm and wilderness type program that's happening in New Hampshire. And last question right here.
This was a question for the panel. Talked a little bit about this in the movie, but I wanted to hear your take on it. Just that we've become a society that's very intolerant of risk and injury. And do you think it's possible to have our children develop this relationship with nature while maintaining that that attitude towards risk, towards injury, or do we need to loosen our standards, I guess?
And so the question is about risk and whether we need to change how we deal with risk in this society in order to have these kinds of experiences you saw in the film. Great. John?
Yeah, that's something because there's a very safety conscious side of me Owen's hit me in the arm because one of my nicknames from my siblings is Johnny Safety. But you know, the thing that comforts me is and also as a scientist, is just seeing the data about what real risks we face. You know, the car, the riding the bicycle without the helmet in that versus the occasional. I mean, just in I know I've seen that circulate on a couple different emails in that where just the relative risk of these the kind of things that can happen to you outdoors versus in your usual everyday activities. So I think by getting that information out there about what real risk is helpful.
Marilyn, I was on.
Sorry. Was there somebody else that has a question?
I was going to that.
Okay. Well, how about Amy, and then Kathy, you can add something in?
I just wanted to echo what John said in terms of somehow working to get the facts out there, to get away from the culture of fear. You're at greater risk of a domestic dog attack than you are of a coyote attack, and yet I run into in programs and things all the time, families that are afraid to go out for a hike and asking me about the bears and the coyotes and all the scary things in the woods. And so I'm not sure how we do that, because even internationally and so many other things going on in our world, we're living in a lot of fear, a lot more than we ever used to before. But I think it's somehow getting that perspective out there, and I guess that's a piece of the education part of it.
Thanks, Amy. And just one reflection from the audience?
Yeah, as a school administrator and also an attorney, risk was very high in my brain, but I ran an experiential school, and my observation is the more you put them out there, the more they learn their own boundaries, the more agile they become, the more adept, and the most accidents we had were off the big toys. So, in 25 years running overnight camps, wilderness programs, you guys ran around in the swamp, right, Owen? And we never had a problem. I mean, a real problem.
Marilyn, can I just echo too that Ron King, who is a landscape architect right here in Concord, has that great point that he always makes during his presentation, and and sort of a bit what you had said for your play area is that the accident reports and all the incidences that happen on structured pre-made playgrounds are off the charts, and you give the kids trees and boulders and you don't have those incidents, and they're actually safer to play in natural places.
Great. So I think on that positive note, we'll wrap up the panel part of this, and I think we'll all move back out into the lobby. You can continue the conversation. I'd like to thank very much Green Concord for hosting us, and also the Red River Theaters for hosting us, to be allowed us to have this film screening. Thanks to all of you for being here tonight and to sharing your thoughts, and I really encourage you to continue having these conversations with your neighbors. Encourage your friends and neighbors to come and see the film, and remember that Rich Loof will be here on Monday night. We do have his books for sale tonight and Monday night, courtesy of Gibson's, and all of them have been signed by hand, by Rich. So thanks again to all of our panel members, to Terry Johnson, Mindy Beltramo, Amy Yackel, Owen, and John Cantor. And now I'm going to ask Owen, would you mind picking the form for me? So for anybody here who wasn't here at the beginning, we had a people bingo game going on. All of the completed forms are in this bag, and the winner will take home Rich Loof's new book.
That was good.
Carla Ferrera.
Looks like Carla Ferrara. Are you still here?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay.